Good morning, everyone. My name is Annabelle Torak, and I have the immense privilege of serving on the board of the Miami Design Preservation League here with Daniel, Nina, Jack Johnson, and the entire brilliant team without whom Art Deco Weekend wouldn't be possible. As you all may know, the theme for this year's Art Deco Weekend is Art Deco Worldwide, and with it comes the fierce, important reminder that Art Deco is a uniting force. Look at us all here in this room. So whether you made it here today from your house down the street, or whether you've come from afar, we are so excited to have you join us. And as Development Committee Chair, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage everyone to join the Miami Design Preservation League. With it, you have free tours here, the ability to come in, and the ability to be part of this immense community that is ever committed to the protection, promotion, and preservation of this, one of the most renowned neighborhoods in the United States and the world. So with that, it is my honor to introduce Alan Raynor, a Renaissance man whose experience spans everything from the entrepreneurial to the artistic to recreational glass blowing. He is a longtime supporter of the Art Deco societies of Miami and New York, and he's witnessed nearly a century of history, and I'm sure this is going to be an absolute barn burner, so please join me in welcoming him today.
Okay, see you later. See you later. Now, as an architectural movement, Art Deco isn't old at all. Barely 100 years now. When we think of Egypt, we think of Central America, Italy, Great Britain. They go way back, don't they? Okay. So what is the history of Art Deco? It's not American, but America has put its own stamp on it. It was French. And the French looked through history, what was made before this, what could they steal from, what could they add it to? So here's what they stole from. Ancient Egypt, the Moors, both in Africa, Egypt and the Moors, Central America, the Aztecs, the Mayans, huh? So the Americans added one unique feature, streamlining, and we'll see some good examples of that, streamlining. Streamlining means smooth, it means get rid of hard corners, streamlining. But I'm going to immediately want some audience input here. I don't think this is working, is it?
You hold it up here.
Hello?
Not too close up here.
Okay. So I want you all to work a little and tell me something. When you look at Art Deco, I don't want you to talk at this moment about technical features. I want you to tell me back what you see that's pleasing to you. What adjective can you throw at me that brings you to Art Deco? Over here, anybody? What do you got? How do you describe the pleasure that you get from Art Deco?
Codes.
Curves.
Yeah.
Curves.
Symmetry.
Yes, good.
Fancy.
Okay, I want a couple more.
It's fanciful.
Fanciful.
Yeah, the fountains.
Okay. You know, in doing this talk preparation and thinking about the features of Art Deco, this lady over here brought up a feature that doesn't say a lot, but it really puts its stamp on Art Deco. She said symmetry. Symmetry. You know, when you look at a Gothic building, a Victorian building, an Art Nouveau, they didn't pay any attention to symmetry. So here we are. I'm showing this slide first because this shows the extra element that the developers of American Art Deco wanted, nautical. Don't you see this practically as a ship coming at you? Do you see the portholes? You see the prow? So, and that's very consistent with South Florida. We have water, we have ships. Oh, by the way, make a note of this. When you're in South Florida, as we are now, you're really better off if you tailor down the word Art Deco. You tailor it down to tropical deco. Because we're tropical, and Art Deco reflects features of the tropic. Features of the tropic such as exotic animals. They'll be on buildings. The exotic fish, the plants, very lush plants. We got plenty of vegetation here. So let's take a look here. This lady over here, when she said symmetry, I think this is a good example of it. Whoop. But I mostly brought this one up to point out that when the developers, designers went to color, it was almost usually every time either it was either a two-part color pattern or a three-part. But one thing is universal. It's always consistent, is they are pastels. You know, these aren't full hues. This is pastel blue, pastel pink, pastel version of tan. So, and we didn't need harsh colors because in South Florida, we've got the sun to bounce off everything and create color. So you don't need a strong color. Two or three color pattern. And I'm sorry about my harsh voice. I don't know where it came from. Okay. Okay.
Yes, the lights off, is that possible? Can you have the lights off so we would actually see?
She's going to see. So we talked about streamlining. Here's a good example where it was done in a retail store environment, plus offices on the second level. So all the historical, time-honored architecture types never give a thought to doing rounded shapes, smooth off the corners. Every time you'll ever see another retail store, you'll always see a square corner coming at you. But this is what Art Deco brought to the party. Oh!
Lincoln and Drexel.
So I talked briefly about pastel, I talked about colors, I talked about a three-color pattern, if you will. So here we've got the lush, vibrant Florida vegetation. We've got flowers. And we've got a three-color combination. Boom, boom, boom. Now, you can see this was added to a brick construction. You can bet your life that up north, after they got through building this building with brick, there was never any thought to add ornament. We call this ornamentation. And that's very, very pleasant. Here's a hotel that fortunately was saved when a lot of the demolition was going on. It's alive and well today, the Carlisle. I want to, again, you've got the three colors, not much green, but green and green, white and yellow. I brought this up here to talk about form, or why do you suppose when they built these in the 1920s, the 30s, the 40s, why were they limited to 3 stories? There's an architectural reason. The reason is, it's almost a letdown to tell you, the buildings codes here, and pretty much universally, said that if you build a building over 3 stories, you had to have an elevator. And elevators were expensive at that time. So boom, this is a walk-up. So if you're in a Carlisle today, the elevator's been added. That was not original. Okay, all these we call these eyebrows. They look sort of like eyebrows. But again, very practical reason why they wanted these eyebrows. Anybody know?
Shade from the sun. Cool for temperature, there was an AC.
Again, we weren't around as adults in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. There was no air conditioning. So this was a device to block out the heat of the sun a little bit. You see how this is here now? But, you know, so that's why these eyebrows became so important. The second, collateral reason might be that they give a nautical effect. And so the developers that used Art Deco supply weren't bashful about using eyebrows. Okay. This to me is a surprise, because I'm going to just ask you this question. That looks like a painting. No, that's a real building. I'm asking you what occupancy, what usage was made of this building. You're looking at a bakery. Isn't that something? I mean, style meant everything in those days. Style. So you can't get a more eye-popping building as this. And they even include, this is usually considered a nautical touch as a mast. So that has its nice 3-color mast. We mentioned nautical. This is definitely a nautical influence. When you went on ships, cruise ships, etc., a lot of railings all over the place between the floors, the whole bit. And on the ships, they used practical material. They used metal. And so this was brought into buildings. Another example of railings, they're using stainless steel, practical on board ship to avoid the effects of the salt water, and again, open, not just a filled-in slab of railings. They used an open effect here. Okay, again, this slide is out of order, but this is a lovely building just on the north side of the district here, the Lincoln Theater. The Lincoln Theater has gone through a lot of rebirth, you might say. To go with the times, it's been a theater. It's been a performance studio. It's been classrooms. It's been artist galleries. So anyway, if you get into Lincoln Road area, that's one place to really get a look at inside. It's got a lot of interior touches. And again, here we are with streamlining. No square corner. Let's see if I can loosen up my throat a little here.
Voice is going.
We're done with the pictures. Because you're really here to hear more about the facts. As this talk is titled, The Decline and Recovery here on Miami Beach. The time period isn't very involved. It's 2 segments of 3 months each. We have one segment, 1920, 30, 40. We have one 50s, 60s, 70s. And
Alan, you want one of these?
I don't think so. No. Everything was going along pretty well. But then hotel owners, which were built to house and attract the tourists, started to let their properties go slipshod, neglect. That doesn't sound like a smart landlord. But here's the reason that they had in mind. All the land, all the vacant lots from like Hollywood, Florida to Sunrise to Miami Beach, there was almost no vacant land around. So the developers talked to the owners of property and said, we want to tear your building down. We'll put in elevators in. We'll put in a 15-story building to replace your 3-story. So the owners at that point stopped being a hotel as we know it. It became boarding houses. Boarding houses. These early hotels didn't have a bath in every room. It was the old bathroom down the hall. And all they wanted was single persons living in there. They were only renting one room. That hotel room, that one room with a bed and table, that was where they lived. The only thing the hotel kept up, because there was no way to put in the kitchen really, they kept the dining room going. It was a three meal a day dining room. So that's where we were. And it attracted people with modest incomes. It attracted people who were old. And that's where the expression was created. South Florida is God's waiting room. So that's about it. Now the rest of my talk, with all the facts, almost every fact I'm going to throw out to you is connected with a person's name. This is a woman, it's a widow. She was a New Yorker. She was now reaching retirement age. And so she said, I'll bring my son and we're going to live in Florida. So she came down and she rented a condo over here on the island in Miami. Nice condo facing the bay. Her name is Mrs. Barbara Cart. I have a little psychological twitch there. It's hard to get the name it's pronounced easily. Capitman. Capitman. So Mrs. Capitman came here, and then she made some trips over to the beach, trips to Miami Beach, and she did not like what she saw. That was in 1975. Okay. So she wasn't even living here on the beach, but she said, this can't be. This is too much of a gem to let go into default like this. So she got a hold of one gentleman, and Leonard Horowitz, who was a designer, and the two of them got in her car, and the car is so old now, we don't remember this style. It was called a Chevette. This car was the means of transportation to take them 10,000 miles. So they had to be committed. The Chevelle was like a box, a little box. So they saw places in the country that had Art Deco. They tried to study it. They got a better understanding of it. They didn't find much tropical deco, of course. They were in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Detroit, Chicago. You know, it didn't always have to be in a real warm weather environment. So they came back. She said, well, I'm going to really try to see what public interest is here to stop all this deterioration, all this demolition. And she formed the League. This is the League's building, 1976. She and several others formed the MDPL, Miami Design Preservation League, and that's what's doing all this. So there's a lot of government involved in all this. So they went before the government, the city of Miami Beach, and said, we need some preservation, we need some protection for these old buildings. Well, who was running the city? No surprise, the city was being run by politicians and developers. And they wanted to go their own way. They didn't want to hear about any preservation people. So, okay. So Mrs. Capperman said, this doesn't look good. We can't get local support. We'll go to Washington. Now, here's what they took with them. And again, there's just a handful of people. They took with them the survey and the inspection report on over 500 buildings all along here, just right along to 500. The federal government said, we're going to do something. We're going to add 400 of these properties into the National Register of Historic Places. And guess what? The word historic is in there, because it means just that. Every other type of historic building in the register came before 1900, you know, historical. It was a 19th century building, a 16th century. So here they were, 20th century, saying, we want to call this history already. And they convinced the National Registry to do so. So they came back to Miami Beach, and where did they go next? Anybody? They went back to the city. Hey, we're just not blowing smoke here. This is something. This is a time-sensitive problem. It's got to be worked on. And so, sure enough, at that point, they were great PR people. They got their story out, and the city fathers said, "All right, we're going to do something." So they took a square mile that we're sitting in, starting with 5th Street, going to 25th Street, and then several blocks inland. And in there's over 100 historical buildings. So that's pretty good. Okay, so there were still a lot of derelict-looking buildings that had been neglected. So Mrs. Capitman looked around for an investor to, rehabilitate a property. She didn't look very far because the person who came forward was her son, Andrew. So Andrew, he bought one of the hotels that we all know the name of. It looks great today. It's within shouting distance from here. He bought the Cardozo. Okay. From there, Mrs. Capitman looked around. We need some new owners. We need investors who are going to be sensitive to these buildings. So she found 12 investors, and they bought 7 properties. So this was starting to look like something with some life into it. But what held them back was the zoning codes and the building codes were still too lenient. You could do pretty much what you wanted. Okay. So that meant another try with a city hall. And sure enough, City Hall said, okay, we're going to update our codes, which is great. Now here's Mrs. Capitman. See, I usually mispronounce her name at least once. Oh, did I mention the league? And at that time, we already had the weekend festival that we're now. Once that festival started, our Deco weekend, it's never been stopped. And this is the 46th year for it. So here's a little surprise question for you again. She and her group had done all these things. Was there anything Art Deco-wise that was left undone? Yeah, there was. This wasn't a worldwide movement yet. Mrs. Capitman, on her own, invited 50 people from the U.S., from all over the world, to come a colloquy, which is really another way of saying a study group. Okay, so that was held within a year. A formal organization was established, the World Congress on Art Deco. The following year, they were all set to have their first convention, and it was going to come to the United States for only the second time in 30 years. And what city in the United States do you think got the convention?
Miami Beach.
Miami Beach. Yeah, they couldn't turn their back on Miami Beach. So what makes this even a little more interesting, the convention is this year, in April. It's going to be more powerful, you might say, than what we can do here. It's going to be composed of 3 weekends, not just 1, 3. It's going to be spread out from Palm Beach down to Miami Beach. So Art Deco's look pretty alive and well. All right, what questions have you got? Okay, Mary, yes.
My understanding is that this genre, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
began life technically as art moderne. There was a famous exposition in Paris circa 1926, and at that point, it was referred to art moderne. So when does the term change to Art Deco? In the late 60s,
Well,
right?
All right, he's just mentioned this big exhibition that was held in Paris, and he didn't give the whole title.
Don't have the whole time.
He gave the first, it's a long title. You gave the first 3 words, I think. Say it again.
It was art moderne of the industrial arts
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
I think
Okay, but
industrial arts.
again, we're talking French now. So the title was in French. And the final 2 words of that exhibit were called decorative arts. And so that word decorative was usage sliced down a little, and it just became Art Deco. So, Mary, let's show them a good picture. Okay, I'll give it a little setup first. I'm going to talk about it. I hope all of you are taking home some kind of memento of Art Deco as you go back to your other places. I would encourage you to take a good hard look at this gift shop. It's got a lot of stuff. It's got books. It's got a poster. It's got the posters of all 46 years that we've had a Art Deco weekend here. Now this is my poster. I brought this from home. This was the first Art Deco weekend that I attended, 2002. And I think, I asked you before, what features do you like about Art Deco that draws you? And I think this artist here did a wonderful job of grabbing those features. It's vibrant, it's upbeat, it's colorful. And put this down, put that down first. Let's go move back a little into the light. Go backward here.
What year was it?
So pastel colors, of course, that goes without saying.
25 years.
Yep. So for about $20, they'll sell you a poster in there.
21 years ago.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Okay.
Picture with you?
Yeah.